The school hallways were eerily silent. Not the usual pre-exam silence of nervous whispers and shuffling papers, this was different. It was absolute, suffocating. The new student, a girl he vaguely recognized, Emily, sat down, confusion written across her face. She picked up her test paper, and Liam could see it change before her eyes. She stiffened, her breath hitched. He knew what she was seeing, the cursed instructions. Liam wanted to warn her, to tell her to run, but his body was no longer his own. His mind still burned with terror, but his body was different, hollow. The classroom shifted again. The walls rippled like flesh, the ceiling expanded, and that same horrible scraping sound echoed through the air. The scent of rot and blood returned. Emily's hands trembled as she wrote. The symbols on her page squirmed like living things, crawling up her arms, burrowing into her skin. Her veins darkened. She whimpered. The student beside her, Eleanor, suddenly convulsed again. Her mouth opened unnaturally wide, a voiceless scream frozen in her throat. Her eyes rolled back. Then she was gone. Not dead, gone. Erased, as if she had never been there. The desk where she sat was empty, the chair neatly tucked in. Liam felt his body stiffen even more. A deep, horrible realization crawled through his frozen mind. This is what happens when you fail. Each wrong answer, each mistake, each second wasted, they erased you. Liam struggled harder, trying to break free, but his body was just a shell now, waiting its turn to disappear. Emily was crying, gripping her pencil so hard it was splintering. Another bell rang. Jeremy, who had been seated 2 rows ahead, convulsed violently. His skin peeled away, layer by layer, revealing something unspeakable beneath. His mouth gaped open in silent horror before his body twisted, unnaturally, impossibly, folding into itself like paper. Then, nothing. The chair he sat in was empty, the test paper gone. Liam's soul screamed inside his frozen body. He could feel himself slipping, fading, piece by piece. More students vanished as the test dragged on. Some simply blinked out of existence. Others suffered horribly before they disappeared, their bodies warped, consumed by whatever force ruled this cursed room. Emily was running out of time. Her test paper bled ink, the letters swimming across the page. She tried to write, but the symbols twisted under her pencil, shifting before she could finish an answer. The final bell rang. Emily dropped her pencil. Her breath stopped, her face contorted in pure horror as her skin cracked, her body trembling violently. She turned to Liam, her lips moved. "Help me." But he couldn't. Emily let out a strangled gasp as her form dissolved into static, flickering, breaking apart like a corrupted image on a screen. Then she was gone. Liam felt something deep inside him break. The exam papers vanished, the chairs emptied, the room returned to normal, the clock ticked again. A new door appeared at the front of the room. It swung open, and more students walked in. Liam watched as they took their seats. The test papers appeared before them. His body remained frozen, but in his mind, he was screaming. Because he finally understood. They weren't just taking a test. They were the test. And they would be forever. Liam tightened his grip on his pencil as he stepped into the dimly lit examination room. Desks were arranged in perfect rows, each occupied by a student staring blankly ahead. The fluorescent lights above flickered erratically, buzzing like dying insects. The exam papers were already on their desks. No teacher was in sight, no instructions. Liam sat down, his breath shallow. He glanced around. None of his classmates moved. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. The silence thickened. He picked up his paper. The first question made no sense. It was just a series of twisted symbols, looping and writhing on the page like they were alive. He blinked. The symbols rearranged themselves into words. Finish the test before the bell rings, or stay forever. A chill ran down his spine. He turned to the student beside him, Eleanor, the girl who always aced every test. She sat rigid, her pencil clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her test was half done, her face contorted in silent agony. He looked at the clock. It wasn't moving. The second hand twitched but never advanced. Time was stuck. A sharp scraping sound echoed through the room. Liam turned back to his test. His own answers had been scribbled out by something unseen, replaced with more of those writhing symbols. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Someone in the back let out a choked sob. A boy, Jeremy, suddenly convulsed. his pencil snapping in his fist. His skin started to peel, curling away like burnt paper, revealing something dark and pulsing beneath. Liam jumped up, knocking his chair over. The others remained seated, faces frozen in silent horror. The walls of the room darkened, the ceiling stretched higher, warping into something grotesque. The floor beneath Liam's feet turned soft, like flesh. He gagged as the air thickened with the coppery stench of blood. A voice whispered in his ear, not a teacher's voice, not human at all. "Time's up." The bell rang, a deafening, shrieking sound that cracked through reality. Liam screamed as the floor split open beneath him, and he fell, not into darkness, but into a classroom just like the one he had left. The same desks, the same students. But now, he was one of them. His hands trembled as he picked up his pencil. The test had restarted. He glanced up at the front of the room. There was a new student entering, their eyes wide with confusion, just like he had been. And behind them, the door slammed shut, forever. Liam tried to scream, but his lips wouldn't move, his body wouldn't move. He was frozen in place like the others, staring blankly ahead. Inside, he was thrashing, clawing at his mind for control, but something held him tight, something ancient. Liam had lost count of how many cycles had passed. Dozens? Hundreds? Time didn't work right here. It stretched and looped, repeating the same torturous exam over and over. But something deep inside him did. That sick, gnawing hunger wasn't just in the classroom anymore, it was in him. He had been part of this cursed test for so long, absorbing the fear and failure of the students before him, that he was no longer just a victim. He was becoming the examiner. The boy next to him hesitated, glancing sideways. His face was nervous, unsure. Liam could feel his fear. The room could too. "Trust me," Liam whispered again, the words slipping out like poison. Not his voice, not his choice. The boy frowned, gripping his pencil. Liam felt a sharp pang in his skull, a cruel warning. The classroom didn't like hesitation. The lights flickered, the air thickened. The boy swallowed hard and wrote the answer. Liam could already see the ink on his paper bleeding, twisting like worms under the surface. The boy didn't notice yet, but his skin had begun to pale. One answer closer to being erased. Liam clenched his fists under the desk. He tried to fight, to push against the force controlling him, but the hunger only grew stronger. The classroom needed more. And Liam was starting to like the way it felt. The test dragged on. One by one, Liam whispered lies. One by one, they trusted him. And one by one, they disappeared. Some students suffered, clawing at their throats as their bodies cracked apart like broken statues. Some simply blinked out of existence, the classroom erasing them cleanly. It didn't matter how they went, the classroom always fed. And every time it did, Liam felt it surge inside him. He wasn't just a part of the test anymore. He was becoming the teacher. The door opened. More students walked in. Liam smiled, his body finally moving freely, no longer a frozen puppet. He adjusted his tie, straightened his exam paper. His chair was no longer a student's desk, it was larger, looming, like a teacher's. He stood up, glancing at the fresh batch of students, all nervously awaiting the exam. Their test papers appeared before them. Liam stepped forward, his shoes clicking against the floor. His voice was no longer a whisper. "Pencils up, students, time to begin." New students entered. They struggled, they failed, and they vanished. And Liam remained. Frozen. He wasn't erased, not yet. He was something worse. He was becoming part of it. The next batch of students filed in. They looked so normal, so alive. Some yawned, some fidgeted, some whispered nervously, all of them clueless about what was coming. The papers appeared. Liam felt it again, that strange pull, that sick hunger deep inside him. It wasn't his own feeling, it belonged to the classroom, and every time a student sat down, it grew stronger. He realized something horrifying. It was feeding. Every vanished student was being absorbed, not just their bodies, but their memories, their thoughts, their fear. And Liam hadn't disappeared because he was being rewritten. A girl named Sophie sat at the desk in front of him, her fingers tapped anxiously against the wood. She squinted at the paper, trying to make sense of the twisting symbols. Liam felt his body twitch, his fingers moved. A shudder ran through him. For the first time since his own test, he could move, just barely, a small flex of his hand, a shift in his fingers. His horror was swallowed by something darker, a new, intrusive thought, something that didn't belong to him. Give her the wrong answers. Liam's stomach lurched. The voice wasn't his, it was part of the test. He fought it, tried to resist, but his mouth opened on its own. A whisper escaped his lips. Number 2 is B. Sophie flinched. She turned, wide-eyed. Liam wanted to scream at her to ignore him, to run, but he couldn't control what he said next. Trust me. Sophie hesitated, then shakily wrote the answer. Liam's stomach twisted in horror as the symbols on her page pulsed, turning darker, bleeding ink. He felt the hunger in the room sharpen. Sophie coughed, her eyes darted to the clock, her breathing quickening, her skin seemed paler now. Liam wanted to stop, he needed to stop. But he couldn't. One by one, he whispered more wrong answers. And Sophie obeyed. The final bell rang. Liam's body jolted as something snapped inside him, like a string cut loose. Sophie let out a choked gasp. Her fingers clawed at the desk as her skin cracked, splintering like porcelain. Her body convulsed, then folded in on itself, her bones bending, her face stretching into something unnatural. She locked eyes with Liam. And she understood. She knew he had done this to her. Her mouth opened in a silent, agonized scream. Then she was gone. The chair was empty. Liam's heart pounded, his breath was shallow. He had helped the classroom consume her. And he had felt good doing it. The door swung open. New students walked in. Liam sat still, his hands folded neatly on the desk. The papers appeared. A boy sat beside him, eyes darting nervously across the page. Liam turned his head, his lips curling into an unnatural grin. He leaned in close. Number 1 is D. Liam didn't want to do this. Liam stood at the front of the classroom. Watching the new batch of students settle into their seats. Their faces were filled with nervous anticipation, their minds still believing this was just another ordinary test. They had no idea. The papers materialized in front of them, soft whispers slithering through the air. The classroom breathed. The students flinched at the unnatural sound, but none of them ran. They never did. Not until it was too late. Liam scanned their faces, his hollow grin stretching wider. He already knew who would fail. He could smell their fear, taste their panic before they even picked up their pencils. A boy at the far end, Daniel, was already sweating, his fingers twitching against the desk. He was doomed. A girl in the front, Olivia, held her pencil with a white-knuckled grip, her lips pressed into a thin line. She might last a little longer. But in the end, they all belonged to the classroom. They just didn't know it yet. The test began. Daniel scribbled an answer. Liam's grin deepened. Wrong. Daniel's pupils dilated as his skin rippled, his veins darkening like spilled ink. His mouth opened, but no sound escaped. His voice was already gone. He convulsed once. Twice. And then he was erased. The other students gasped, their chairs scraping against the floor as they instinctively recoiled. Where did he go? One boy stammered, his voice shaking. Liam turned his head slowly, unnaturally. He failed, he said simply. No distractions, keep writing. The students obeyed. They always did. Some cried quietly, their hands trembling over their cursed tests. Others wrote desperately, praying to something that wasn't listening. The classroom was always hungry. And it would always be fed. More mistakes. More wrong answers. More empty seats. Until only one remained. Olivia. Tears streamed down her face, her breath shallow, uneven. Her desk was the only one still occupied. The rest of the room was silent. The walls had shifted, dark veins stretching across their surface, pulsating. The lights overhead flickered, barely illuminating the room now. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of forgotten souls. Olivia knew she was next. She felt it. But her test wasn't finished. She looked up at Liam, her voice a broken whisper. Pete, please, she begged. I don't want to disappear. Liam tilted his head, that grin never leaving his face. You don't have to, he said. Olivia's breath hitched. Hope flickered in her tear-filled eyes. Liam leaned in, his voice smooth, velvety. "You can stay." The room trembled in anticipation. Olivia stared at him. "You mean, I won't vanish?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam's grin widened, his shadow stretching impossibly long behind him. "Not if you take my place." Olivia froze. She looked around at the empty desks, the walls that breathed, the shadows that moved on their own. Realization dawned. Liam hadn't escaped. He had simply become something else. The test didn't erase him. It made him part of it. And now, it wanted her. Tears fell freely from Olivia's eyes. She knew she had no choice. If she refused, the test would take her anyway. Her fingers trembled as she set down her pencil. Slowly, shakily, she stood. The room let out a low, shuddering exhale. The classroom approved. Liam stepped back as Olivia's body locked in place. Her fingers twitched at her sides, her mouth fell open, but no words came out. Her body stiffened, her eyes dulled. Liam watched as the last piece of who she was faded into the walls, into the desk, into the test itself. Then, she smiled. The door creaked open. New students walked in. Liam stepped aside, straightening his tie as Olivia took her place at the front. Her grin was soft, welcoming. A teacher's grin. The test papers appeared before the students. Olivia spoke, her voice smooth, warm, unfamiliar. "Pencils up, students, time to begin." His suit was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted. His hands, once shaking in fear, now rested calmly behind his back. He was no longer one of the students. He was the proctor. And the classroom was his. The new batch of students looked so young, so fragile, they had no idea where they were. Some of them whispered, confused by the dim lighting, the way the air felt too thick, too heavy. The test papers materialized on their desks, appearing in a soft puff of black smoke. The classroom itself trembled, eager to begin. Liam's grin stretched just a little too wide. "Pencils up," he said, his voice smooth, commanding. "Your test begins now." The students jumped at the sound of his voice. Some hesitated, some looked toward the door. Liam chuckled. They didn't know yet. That door would never open for them again. As the students read their papers, confusion spread across their faces. The same reaction, always the same. The letters swam, twisting in unreadable, unnatural patterns. Their hands trembled as they tried to write, the ink bleeding like black veins into the paper. One girl, Maria, raised her hand. Liam's head tilted unnaturally, like a puppet. His grin never wavered. "Yes? I don't understand these questions," Maria stammered, her voice shaking. "I can't read them." Liam's grin widened. "Then you better guess." Maria's face paled. She lowered her hand slowly, turning back to her cursed test. The room shuddered in anticipation. The first mistake came quickly. A boy named Ryan scribbled an answer. Wrong. His pencil snapped in half, his breath hitched. He clutched his hand as his fingernails began to peel away, curling like burnt paper. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out.